This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Media days are here, and so are the two-time defending Big Ten champion Michigan Wolverines. We'll break it down here on this week's episode of Michigan Podcast.
But there's going to be one team that's going to play solely as a team. No man is more important than the team. No coach is more important than the team. The team, the team, the team.
Looks deep for Anthony Clark. Waits for it. Hit. Caught.
They said you can't be Ohio State. Now what?
Brady gets terrific. Throws it. And a touchdown. Knight again. Schultz just before Brazil got him. And a leaping interception by Woodson.
Harbaugh back to throw over the middle. Caught by Collier at the 5 on his feet. Touchdown, Michigan. On its way. It's good.
He's 5'7", 179 pounds, a junior at Michigan. But Jamie Morris packs a wallop, and he delivers for Bo Schembechler.
And here's your first play. Pressure coming. Sack. It is Glenn Steele, number 81, who fought his way through the traffic.
Option. And Robinson calls his own number, and he's going to score. Oh, an easy touchdown for Robinson and Michigan.
We're going to win the championship again because we're going to play as a team. And when we play as a team and the old season is over, you and I know it's going to be Michigan again. Michigan.
Go Blue, I'm Steve Deace. Welcome to this week's episode of Michigan Podcast, and welcome to my Maize and Blue man cave. In fact, this will not be our new setting. We're doing this a little remotely, a little ad hoc this week with the odd times of Big Ten Media Days and coinciding with my work schedule. And this was the only way we're going to be able to bring you an episode this week. And with everything going on, we wanted to make sure that we did that because kind of the official now start of the season is when conference media days arrive. The Big Ten has gone this week. Michigan went on Thursday. A lot to talk about and a lot to discuss. So we're doing it here for you on this week's episode of Michigan Podcast. I'm just going to riff on the things that stood out to me for a few minutes here on the program this week, and we'll call it a day. All right. So let's start with the big issue that emerged on the eve of Big Ten media days. And that is the leak, presumably from the NCAA side of things, that Jim Harbaugh will face, a 4-game suspension for a series of minor Code 2, I think, or Grade 2 is what they're called, violations, the most serious of which was not being forthcoming about the nature of an illegal contact with a set of recruits who were visiting on their own during COVID. And Jim Harbaugh took them to a very well-known campus haunt and bought them burgers. And then when he got turned in for this, lied about it. All right. Now, he is adamant that he did not lie. This has been going on since January, of course. We've been waiting for the resolution of this. If I had to guess what happened here is Harbaugh gave him the equivalent of, I don't recall, and go jump in a lake. You're coming at me for hamburgers. And, all these other schools are out here just dropping bags. Get the bleep out of my presence with that. And the NCAA decided we'll make an example out of Michigan because your administration's so stupid, weak, and elitist and sanctimonious that it will actually really care what we think when no other program of merit and means in the sport does. Sure enough, that plan appears to have worked. All right, because Michigan's administration is that stupid, weak, and sanctimonious that it's one of the few and the last remaining administrations in college sports caring what the NCAA thinks. All right, so apparently this is going to go down. I'm not exactly sure how. I mean, I can't foresee a scenario where Harbaugh agrees to this, and his attorney is Tom Mars. So maybe this was leaked in a way to try to pressure the university. Now, if I were Harbaugh, I'd just come out and coach anyway. What are they going to do? Well, Steve, they'll vacate wins. What does that even mean? Like, they did this with the Fab Five. Did you did your brain just forget that the years 1992 to 1993 happened, and you just don't know? You just don't know that the Fab Five existed. Who gives a freaking rip about that? And so what if they vacate wins? I mean, is the NCAA going to physically come to your athletic department library and remove the lines of those games as if they did not occur? Of course not. It'll have no bearing on the polls. The NCAA has no control over college football rankings in the college football postseason. Will the college football playoff committee get together and say, wow, it appears that at the end of the year, Michigan's actually 8-0, not 12-0, because they didn't play those first 4 games. That's never – who gives a rip? And screw these people with their unbalanced scales. Here, I'd have one rule at this point. Don't harbor criminals. Other than that, I don't care. And whatever you pay them or somebody else does, we got this really persnickety little bugger called the IRS, man. Make sure they get their cut. All right. And that's between you and the feds. Not my problem. Those would be my only rules at this point. And given most of what gets taught in these universities, I used to have 2 rules. Don't ruin the academic reputation of your university. Well, frankly, much of what's being taught in these universities is already ruining their academic reputations. So I don't give a rip about that either. All right. So just don't harbor criminals. No menaces to society on campus. All right. Other than that, I don't care. It's called capitalism. And then we have, everybody has to make sure Uncle Sam gets his cut. And if you don't, well, there's a much, much bigger problem than the NCAA to deal with. It's called the Internal Revenue Service. And then let's play ball, right? That's what I would do. I suspect, I saw Jerry DiNardo make this point a lot today, watching Big Ten Media Days with Michigan featured in day 2, worried about complacency with Michigan. And I don't think that's necessarily a terrible take. I mean, in the entire history of Michigan football, Michigan has won more Big Ten championships than anybody else, but has never won 3 undisputed titles in a row. It's won 5 in a row before, but a couple of those were shared. It's never won 3 undisputed in a row. I think only once in the history of the Big Ten has a team won 4 undisputed championships in a row. And Ohio State just recently did that, I believe, with Urban Meyer. So it is not easy to do that. And it's not as if, Michigan's already playing in the toughest division, or at least the second toughest division in all of the sport. It's not a crazy take at all to say a little bit of complacency cost you a game somewhere. And here we are. I'm not worried about that now after the events of this week. I think this will be a rallying cry. I think this will be a Michigan versus everybody. If the 4-game suspension does go down, and maybe you were worried about that first road game at Nebraska and how tough of a game that was for Michigan a couple of years ago, and they'll be really hyped up to welcome the defending champs in. Well, that would also be Jim Harbaugh's debut. And I think they will absolutely rally around that. So I think this may go a long way towards any complacency worries whatsoever. Now to some of the team matters. I saw Blake Corum say he's 100%. I saw him say to the crew on the Big Ten Network, hey, I'm back to being me. He's ready to go. Harbaugh absolutely raved about J.J. McCarthy. Said he was a generational talent. He said, I've told the team, wherever he's leading, follow him, and I'm doing the same thing as the head coach. And here's the thing to remember about J.J. McCarthy. This is not being mentioned enough. Guys, he didn't throw for like 6 or 7 months last year. So he didn't throw during spring, during conditioning. He didn't throw until right before camp. He was rehabilitating. I think it was the shoulder. I think it was the shoulder or the elbow, but I think it was the shoulder. So you take all the mental reps. I know Harbaugh loves that phrase. If mental reps were a thing, they wouldn't have guys put on pads. It's not a thing, guys. It's called football, not think ball. All right, it's called football. All right, they have to hit. Okay, so mental reps are just a way to give somebody a feeling like, attaboy, you're still out there, even though you're not doing a damn thing that matters. All right, mental reps. It's not think ball. It's football. So he's out there all off season. He's not been the starter before. He gets out there. JJ does all off season. He can't throw, so he's not really fully involved in the offense. They get into fall camp. He's got to displace a starter, and so that means those reps are getting split. So he didn't get really any meaningful reps all spring. Gets into fall camp and he is splitting all the meaningful reps. So I mean, his learning curve was way behind, and you could see that once the competition got tougher. And they tried to set him up. They tried to throw the ball more at times during last year. It was like pulling teeth. You could see that development was behind. And then they ran into Ohio State, who was dumb enough to play cover zero most of the game and play man-to-man everywhere, and we lit them up. And I think actually it was the next game against Purdue that you saw JJ really step into his own, really for the first time as a passer. And then without a gimmicky defense on the other side. And then against TCU, he had a great game, except for 2 plays. Unfortunately, those 2 plays were pick sixes and cost us the game. So I anticipate this year, with him now having an entire offseason, he's going to get the starters reps in practice. I think you're going to see him take a big, big step. And if he does, the good news is I think you're going to see Michigan playing for a national championship. The bad news is you won't be seeing any more of J.J. McCarthy playing for the University of Michigan. But we want that bad news because it means we got the good news that we were looking for. I just don't see a team with a lot of weaknesses. There's a concern about the second cornerback spot, but they got 3 guys to compete for that spot. Got to think out of one of those 3, some functional player opposite Will Johnson will emerge. And one thing that stands out to me every year watching Big Ten Media Days, just how well-spoken our players are, man. I mean, they're just classy. And they're smart and they're mature. And you can see that listening to Mike Sanderstill. I mean, Mike Sanderstill just has a presence, even at his diminutive size. Chris Jenkins just has a presence. Blake Corum just has a presence. So let's do this, man. We're ready. I think this team it leads the Big Ten in returning production. I think the way last season ended absolutely puts a terrible taste in its mouth. I think watching their coach get dragged for doing something that is barely jaywalking in the South, I think that's a rallying cry. Practice begins next week. I think this is going to be, the last 2 have been pretty good. You just get the sense that this is a team on a mission. Last year's mission was to do it again. Go into Columbus, show that last year wasn't a fluke. This year's mission is to complete the mission. And I think they've got a real chance to do that. Keep J.J. McCarthy healthy, though. That is the key. All right, that's going to do it for right here on Michigan Podcast, breaking down Big Ten Media Days. There really wasn't a lot of other news. We don't have a lot of question marks. Probably return the best offensive line in the country. Probably return the best running back duo in the country. This should be maybe the best defense returning in the Big Ten this year. I guess there's a kicker battle there. I thought it was interesting that Jimmy singled out Tommy Doman, who did all of the kicking in the spring game, singled him only out at punter. Said that the Louisville transfer, who's a very accurate kicker, doesn't have the strongest leg, though, said that he had the kicking edge right now, but they're waiting. Is it Samaha, I believe is his name, the freshman? They're waiting for him to come in and compete for that spot. It's going to be a step down there. You don't just replace arguably the greatest kicker in the history of the university. So there will be a step down there, but special teams under Harbaugh every year have been really good. So they're going to be good there. It just may not be, the stuff of legends that Jake Moody was, but they'll be good there. I think you compensate for that by not needing the kicker as much, that you're more effective in the red zone now because you've got a fully armed and developed first-round draft pick at quarterback. So now we see August 14th, mark that date down. That's when the Big Ten Network will be doing its annual bus tour that goes into Ann Arbor. That's on August 14th. So make sure you circle that date. They're going back to their original format, which is good. I don't know why they abandoned it the last few years. Remember when this first started out, every school got its own hour. And then the last few years, they thought we needed field hockey updates or something. I don't know who the hell made that decision. No one cares. I'm sure the field hockey athletes are great, but no one cares. All right. Your families care. Great. Glad you got a scholarship. Hope you win. Nothing personal, but I really need to find out who the second string right guard is, and that's why we're watching. All right. So clearly now with Fox basically owning the Big Ten fully, someone got smart over there and said, why are we talking about anything of the college football teams? That's all anybody cares about. So they're back to every school gets its own episode now. Michigan's episode, mark your calendars, Michigan's episode will be August the 14th. All right, so that will do it. Don't forget, like, rate, subscribe, share, 5-star review this video. Help us to find more Michigan fans just like you, whether you're watching here on YouTube or listening to the podcast version of this. You can also follow us on Michigan Podcast or on Twitter or X or whatever the hell it's called now. At Michigan Podcast is where you can follow us on Twitter X. That kind of sounds like unseemly. Tweet to me on X because what are the tweets called now? X's? I don't know, man. I don't know. Just Follow me on Twitter at Michigan Podcast and keep up to date on everything we think about all things Wolverines in between episodes. And with camp starting this week, we're going to be thinking an awful lot. So keep an eye out and a lookout for that. All right. We'll see you next week right here on Michigan Podcast. I'm Steve Deace. Go Blue.